President.
Chers collègues, bonjour.
Good morning, dear colleagues. I now invite you to observe a minute of silence for prayer or meditation.
Veuillons nous asseoir.
Please be seated.
La séance est reprise.
We now resume our session. Honourable members, in accordance with Rule 9 of the Rules of Procedure, we are now going to interpretation, English. Can you hear me? English? The interpreter would like to have a confirmation that you can hear the English.
Honorablement, conformément à la
Honourable members, in accordance with Rule 9 of the Rules of Procedure, we are now going to swear in new members. I now invite the Clerk of Parliament to call new members to be sworn in. Mr. Clerk, you have the floor.
You are not here?
The delegation is not here.
So we continue. J'invite le secrétaire général à
I call on the clerk to read out the first item on the agenda. Mr. Clerk, you have the floor.
The first item on the agenda is presentation and debate on the draft motion on the rotation of the presidency of the Pan-African Parliament.
honorablement en conformité
Honourable members, in accordance with Rule 61, notice on motions, which was tabled on Wednesday, 10 May 2017, the motion was recorded in writing and sent to the Secretariat for consideration. I now invite the mover of the motion, Honourable Kalyan, to make her presentation. You have the floor, Honourable.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues, and I'd like to thank the President for allowing this important motion to be debated this morning. At the very outset, colleagues, honourable members, I would like to make it very clear that this motion is not about an individual. It is about a principle, namely the principle of rotation. I'm not going to read the motion out. You all have it in front of you. But what I'd like to say is that this is the third time in the history of this Parliament that this motion has come before this House. It was tabled in 2007, And the motion actually succeeded with a vote of 143 in favor and 20 against. The Bureau at the time failed to implement the resolution of the House. Now that in itself is a serious failing of how this House functions. In 2015, the motion came before the House again, and after a strong debate, the President at that time used Rule 93.2 incorrectly, I might add, and therefore the motion was not put to the House for a vote. Those of you who know the history of this Parliament will know that the first President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Mongela, refused to vacate her seat when her term of office came to pass. She was convinced, based on the convention of the principle of rotation, to vacate her seat, and the Honorable Idris then became the President of the Pan-African Parliament. He too played like a real gentleman, and when it came to the end of his term of office, he vacated his seat in fine form and in keeping with the principle of rotation. So colleagues, here we are again today, debating something which has already been passed by resolution of this House. And I sincerely hope that democracy will prevail today, that we will go back to the guiding principles of our mother body, the African Union, and we will legitimize and legalize the principle of rotation to the point where it was interrupted. Colleagues, what I'm asking for is not a new thing. As stated in the motion, a convention has the persuasion of law. It may not be written into the rules, but if there's a gentleman's agreement and it prevails over a period of time, it does have the persuasion of law. So, the African Union honors the practice of rotation in the leadership of its organs, and therefore I call on this House to include it in the current rules of procedure, simply because, although it is catered for in Article 12.1 of the Malabo Protocol, that protocol the process of ratifying it is very slow. We need 28 countries to do that. At the present moment, after bringing it into power by heads of states 2014, so many years later, we are nowhere close to the target. It might take us another 5 years to bring that protocol into effect. So what I'm saying, and the amendment that I'm proposing, is not anything new. It is exactly as proposed in Article 12.1 of the Malabo Protocol. I so move. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Who seconds the motion? Honorable Izungu Masanga Zeli.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Honorable President. This motion that was just presented by my colleague from the Committee on Rules, the Deputy Chairperson of this committee, I wanted to support and second this motion so that we can debate the issue. And this is the second, even the third time this debate will take place. And our colleagues have been talking about this issue of rotation for a long time. And luckily, the Deputy Chairperson of the Committee on Rules tabled this motion, and I was eager to second it so that once and for all we can make a decision on this matter. And this is why I seconded it. And during the course of our debate, I will take the floor and present my reasons for seconding it. So I now just at this stage second the motion. Thank you, Honorable President. Thank you very much. In accordance with Rule 61, one of the rules of procedure, the debate on a motion cannot exceed 1 hour.
Honorable Makamo est dans le trafic, elle a envoyé un mot pour dire qu'elle sera en retard.
Yes, yes, you have the floor.
سيد الرئيس مرحبا بجميع الزملاء.
Thank you, Honorable President. I would like to welcome all our colleagues. Firstly, I was very much surprised to look at the agenda because the issue of Palestine should have been on the agenda. And there is an issue related to the Palestinian prisoners, a motion. And I hope that there will be a session that will enable Palestine to participate as observer, to be able to follow the discussion on this topic, not least since they are members of the Pan-African Parliament who want Palestine to obtain full observer status. And here, allow me just to finish what I have to say. This is not something to take lightly. There are many Palestinian prisoners that are being held in very difficult circumstances. For point of order.
A motion on the order paper and the honourable member.
سيد الرئيس ليس من اللائق أن لا يتم.
Honourable President, Mr. President, it seems that there's a little bit of chaos here to respond.
رد في
Collègues,
عقلك.
veuillez prendre place, je vais.
Dear colleagues, please sit down. I'll provide an answer. The first person on my list is Honorable Martin Niteretse from Burundi. Thank you very much, Honorable President. Please wait. Point of order.
Before the point of order, Mr. President, I was very much surprised when I heard the presenter and the seconder of this motion. What are we saying here? That when a motion is passed in this House, it is not implemented. I will believe in a chamber. When a motion is passed, it becomes law and should be implemented. If the law that has been passed in 2007, 143 votes against 20 votes is not implemented, I believe what should be done, what should be done now in this House is for this motion that has been passed in 2007 to be implemented. That should be the motion now, and not to debate again this motion and call for a decision.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, we said that we will debate the motion tabled today. The previous cases first need to be put into context to explain why they have not been implemented. But now we're saying we open a debate for something today because it was not implemented. But we cannot go back to explain what happened in 2007 or 2015, why this motion was not implemented. Well, if you want us to go back in history, we can see why the motion wasn't implemented in 2007. But as far as I'm concerned, a motion was tabled, and we will move on to the debate. Honorable Martin Niteretsi.
Order, Mr. President.
Ouais.
Mr. President, we are an institution that have came into existence way back in 2004. And the year 2007 they are talking to here, it's within our period of existence as an institution. So we cannot be seen passing motions way back in 2007. Then once again, we are the very same institution that goes against that. Irregardless of whatever, Mr. President, happened in that period, I want to support the honorable member from Sierra Leone to say, let us go back and implement what we resolved as this honorable house in 2007, as opposed to debating a very same motion with the very same facts. And you know, that's my proposal, Mr. And I second him. Thank you.
Oui.
Thank you. Point of information. Honorable President, we are a very serious institution, otherwise we wouldn't have been here. However, the motion tabled today is not the same as the one in 2007. Honorable Kalyan should have formulated it differently if she wanted to discuss the motion of 2007. But now we have a new motion tabled by Honorable Kalyan. So we don't have to go back to the previous ones. It's very clear. We have the motion tabled before us. We don't ask to discuss the motion of 2007. It only asks to accept this motion or not. So we are here to vote and accept it or reject it. Simple as that. Thank you, dear colleagues. Dear colleagues, let us not get overexcited. This is a legal debate. We are men and women of the law, and now there is a case brought on a specific date, and we cannot judge on something that was brought previously. We are legal experts, after all. It is the 15th today. Can we say we do not want to judge the issue of the 15th, but something previously? The Committee on Rules, these are legal experts. They would have formulated their request differently if they wanted the motion of 2007 implemented. Otherwise, we can reject the motion, but we must debate the motion tabled today. We are legal experts. Let us not be overpassionate. Rotation is something that is good for all of us. For those who think the day that the decision on rotation will be taken, it will enable all regions to be on an equal footing. We will start from zero. It has no retroactive effect. So, dear colleagues, please let us move to the debate. Chairperson of the committee.
Oui, oui. D'abord,
First, the person behind you.
May I...
please, there are somebody who need the floor. They are already make a motion.
Yeah, may I just give you clarity on a point? I was incorrect in my figures. May I, for point of clarity for the House, the report from the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and the motion that was put in 2007, I quoted the incorrect figure from the Hansard. The correct figure, it was adopted on 120 to 114 vote. And the question on that day was, according to our rules, the resolutions which was adopted in 2007 were supposed to be put in practice the following session. I only came to know of this information on Friday when I obtained a copy of the Hansard, and my original motion was already tabled. So I'm not amending the motion. What I'm saying is that this is information to supplement and support my motion, that it has already been debated, but I'm now proposing a formal amendment. So I would like that the motion be continued to be debated, sir.
No, but wait,
Yes, please.
Presiding, distinguished colleagues, I believe that Parliament is the same everywhere. More so a parliamentary body that makes her own rules. At the level of Parliament, when Plenary decides on a motion, that motion has the effect of law. It constitutes part of our rules of procedure. And so I was baffled. That's why you saw me going over to Honorable Santosh to ask, why table a new motion? I think what we should be debating here is that the motion that was tabled and passed upon in 2007 should now be engrafted within our rules so that we begin in the implementation. This is good for the survival of the Parliament and for our collective working relationship. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Honorable President. Previously, when I took the floor to second the motion tabled by my colleague, I told you that I wanted to second this motion so that once and for all we can find a solution with on this issue of rotation. Now, I have the privilege of, since 2004, being member of the Committee on Rules. Since 2004, I was first a rapporteur, then I became deputy chairperson, and I am chairperson today. So since 2004, I was a member of this committee. That means I've been following the history and the process very closely that has led us to the revision of the protocol governing the Pan-African Parliament. The colleagues who say that the motion was adopted in 2007 are quite right. Indeed, we have considered and adopted this motion. And as someone also said here, once a motion has been adopted, it should be implemented. He is also right. However, curiously, this motion of 2007, which was adopted according to the results of the vote as presented by my colleague, was never implemented. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that back then, in the rules of procedure, there were no modalities for implementing the principle of rotation. Yes, the principle is accepted, but how should we go about it? Now, the Committee on Rules should propose amendments to the rules of procedure in order to include the modalities to implement the motion on rotation, this motion that has been tabled. And in the ensuing period, the Assembly of Heads of State, when the committee was mandated to make amendments to the rules of procedure, through the Executive Council, took a decision on the Pan-African Parliament. I think we all here have, those who are familiar with the developments in the Pan-African Parliament will remember that decision. Now, what did this decision say? The decision of the heads of state said that the Pan-African Parliament should renew its instances, or even or re-elect the existing instances. That is the first decision. Second decision was that the Pan-African Parliament should start the process of revising its protocol, taking into account Rule 24, stating that 5 years after its implementation, the protocol should be assessed. An assembly of heads of state should take place to assess the effectiveness of the protocol and also see how we can move towards a universal suffrage, election by universal suffrage of members of Pan-African Parliament. Now, based on this decision, the plenary here committed to implement this decision, and that is how in May 2009 we renewed the organs of the Pan-African Parliament. And now that the review process of the protocol is underway, let us wait for the principle of rotation to be mentioned in the protocol, because it did not exist in the previous protocol. And this revision took into account the provision, and you will see that in the new protocol, it is clearly stated that the members of the Bureau are elected in taking into account the principle of rotation. So this is a motion that was implemented as requested by the heads of state, endorsed by the plenary, and those who prepared the revision of the protocol included it. And you will see that in this protocol we do mention rotation, as my colleague rightly mentioned in the text of the motion. Therefore, we said that given the fact that the protocol would be revised, and that was the case, how now should we proceed to renew the instances of the Pan-African Parliament, and particularly the Bureau? And we said the rules of procedure, Article 15, should always prevail. What does Rule 15 of the Rules of Procedure state? Rule 15 of the Rules of Procedure on nominations states the following. For the nomination, each region may present a candidate for the president and 2 candidates, ensuring equal representation for vice presidents. This is the provision of Rule 15, which enabled us to renew the instances in 2009. It's also this provision of Rule 15 that enabled us to renew the Bureau in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And it's also this provision which enabled us to renew the instances in 2015, according to this provision. And today, we have a desperate need for this principle of rotation. And we agree. The plenary adopted this principle already, but the practical modalities were lacking. As we said, we would once and for all resolve this issue in our new protocol. We obtained it as the heads of state and government accepted it. It's included in our new protocol. Now, what remains to be done? Honorable President, there are 2 things to do. Firstly, we should ensure that our respective states that we represent here ratify the protocol, and that very shortly, in 2 or 3 months, we can expedite the speed of ratification so that the protocol can come into force. The second thing we have to do, while the states are in the process of ratifying the protocol, the Pan-African Parliament should review the rules of procedure in accordance with the new protocol, so that once the protocol comes into force, after the last ratification instrument was deposited, 30 days later, well, the chairperson of the AU will establish a new parliament, and they will have the provisions of the rules of procedure in place already. That will make their task much easier, and all the principles that we want today will be put in practice with immediate effect. Honorable President, I think that is the approach to follow. And the motion tabled by my colleague has the merit of reminding us that this principle needs to be respected. But we must ensure that our heads of state enable us to implement this protocol. There are maybe 15 countries who've ratified, and so we still need another 15 for it to come into force. Now let us make that effort so that it can soon come into force. We won't have a need to debate. It will be once and for all resolved in the protocol. I thank you.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La question que
Thank you, Mr. President. The question I'd like to ask is whether after the clarifications of the chairperson of the Committee on Regulations, do we really need to debate this matter? Since the new protocol is providing for this, as long as the new protocol is not yet in force, are you going to discuss or to touch the rules of procedure? We are a continental organization, and we need to lead by example. Therefore, I'd like to say that we didn't have this information that has just been provided by the chairperson. Had we had this information, we wouldn't have any need to make this to move this motion. So let's wait for the ratification of the protocol, the new protocol. What we need to do today is to lobby to our states to, as soon as possible, ratify the new protocol for us to implement the texts. This is my proposal, Mr. President. Based on the explanations that we've just had, I don't see the use of still discussing this matter. I thank you.
Chers collègues, j'ai dit ne passionnons.
Dear colleagues, let's not have a passionate debate, please. This is a legal debate. I thought that the chairperson of the committee would come and give us crystal clear explanation, and we are not here to reinvent the protocol. Our motion does not supersede the Constitutive Act. This is the point, and I'm talking under your control, Mr. Chairperson. The Constitution is the supreme norm. Yet our Constitution here is the Constitutive Act. So even though we move a motion or adopt a motion, this motion should be in compliance with our Constitution. So let's not be passionate, please. Let's talk legal matters. Do not focus your attention on one individual. Let's just take the matter legally. Do not name anyone. What we want to do, do not blame ourselves. These days, modify our constitutions for elections, etc. But we are not having this debate only for elections. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And in the same vein, I'd like to thank the chairperson of the Committee on Rules. I said, and I will repeat it, we are here mature men and women, grown-ups, and we are able to regulate our institutions because our states place their confidence in us to be here to speak with one voice as Africans. I think this is a recurring problem. We need to be ambassadors to our states to definitely settle this problem, because the Malabo Protocol has settled this problem. My country has been the first country to ratify the Malabo Protocol. So please, by October, we will be able to finally settle this problem, and then the rotation will start, actually. Thank you.
Rises on a point of order, they have to state the point of order. Now, in the last two speakers, they rose on a point of order and gave you a long speech. Is this part of the debate or not? As you have said, we should follow the rules of procedure. If someone rises on a point of order, they must be specific about what the point of order is, not give us a long speech.
Point of order, Mr. President. Mr. President, you are not looking to the left or right.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, you want us to discuss this motion or having points of orders over and over again? So we've already have been discussing for 35 minutes now. So please go straight to the discussion. This general debate will be closed in 1 hour, or in half an hour now.
Yeah.
yeah, point of order.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Mr. President, I think this motion is properly before this House. There are many parliaments where motions are passed and are not implemented. This is not the only parliament. And there is nothing wrong in bringing a motion 10 years later, because a lot of things have changed. We have been told that there is a protocol that has been drafted. There are so many things that have happened. So the motion is properly before the House. I think it was the second of the motion who brought in the issue of the protocol. This thing is not about the protocol. Let us not tie the amendment of our rules to the protocol. Protocol may take another 100 years to be signed. We know about our governments. Let us make our own rules as this House, and this is about an amendment to rule number 61. So, Mr. President, let us debate this rule and pass it and amend it, because the one that was done in 2007, a lot of things have happened since then. This protocol was not there, the Malabo thing was not there, so many other things were not there. I think a lot of things have changed. So much water has passed under the bridge. Members, let us debate this one, pass it, and get the President and the Bureau to implement it immediately. Because the motion is very clear. It says before the vacancy of the Bureau of PAP is declared. So this is a motion which is giving a timeline. So let us debate this motion and pass. Let us not bring extraneous issues about the protocol. Protocol is something that may never get passed by our countries. Thank you.
Mr. President, point of order. Mr. President.
Mr. President.
The question is, why must we debate this motion? As you can recall, the question of rotation was a gentleman's agreement prior to the election of this present president. I remember clearly, we spent hours debating this issue. And next year, probably there's going to be an election. And we do not want what happened before to happen again. That's why this motion must be debated. Prior to that, it was just a gentleman's agreement, Mr. President. We want to make it a law so that it can be put in the rules, so that we don't have no ambiguous debate again on this issue. Let's settle it once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, please. So, I was saying, do not speak of elections or aim at elections in our discussions. Some of our colleagues think that the motion supersedes the Constitution. Even if we take a decision, it should comply with the Constitutive Act. It's not only to say that If it is how things go in some countries, that is that orders supersedes decrees, I think that our legal texts are well classified, and therefore let's abide by them. Point of order? Yes, you have the floor. Mr. President, point of order. Yes, you're right. Our Constitutive Act, the Constitutive Act supersedes our motion, but this is a sovereign session and a sovereign parliament. Therefore, we need to, I think that we need to discuss this matter. But before discussing it, the fact of not discussing it, discussing the rotation, is not really some kind of disrespect for us. I don't think if you are embarrassed, Mr. President, if you have any embarrassment, if you're embarrassed of such a discussion, you just can leave the Vice President to chair this session, because I'm noting that there is some dialogues between you and some of our colleagues. Therefore, in order to be compliant with our text, and since we are talking about your very position, Mr. President, please the President is here to moderate the discussions. I've already opened the debate. I'm not really embarrassed. I have no embarrassment. I'm not at unease at all. Yes, the floor is yours. I thank you very much, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. When we allude to the motion that has been voted in 2007 by the plenary, that can be compared to a jurisdiction it is a decision that was made by this jurisdiction. When we try and explain the reason behind the signing of the new protocol of by our heads of states in Malabo, there's signature has not yet any legal value as long as it has not been ratified by the states. Therefore, from my point of view, a jurisprudence that has already been set in 2007, even though we don't have any implementation text, this jurisprudence is still valid. Therefore, I think we'd rather rely on this jurisprudence and continue our debate on the motion moved by our colleague. Otherwise, let's assume, Mr. President, that in 2, 3, or 4 years, the ratification has not yet occurred. What are we going to do in this case? So the 2007 jurisprudence should be taken into account and included in the current rules of procedure. The rules of procedure are not is not based on the Malabo Protocol, so it's not a constitution. We're not talking about constitution here because it doesn't exist yet. This is my point of view, Mr. President. I thank you.
Mr. President, point of order.
C'est le débat ou le point d'ordre?
Is this a debate or point of orders or a series of points of orders?
Nous allons écouter tous les intervenants.
We'll be listening to all the members and then come to a conclusion. But please, we cannot just overlook the march of our parliament or the way our parliament works. We are a sovereign parliament that has been established by our states, And this is the Assembly of Heads of State that dictates the way we are supposed to do things. So let's continue our debate. It's 9:45. We have a few minutes left for this debate. So the floor is open. You have 2 minutes to voice your position.
Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie.
Mr. President, I thank you very much. The question, I would like to ask a question. Say, what is the value that we give to our committees in this House? Inasmuch as the committee, the chairperson of the Committee on Rules, based on the text, has given us the position, his position, we are still debating, and we are still debating. I wonder on which basis we are debating. If you want us to give our sense here, we will not be able to, or will not be obliged, rather, to implement the text. There are some members that talked about the OAU and the AU. We have officials from the OAU and AU that were elected twice without taking into account the rotation principle. We have examples also within our African bodies where this principle is not that often implemented or enforced. So please, Mr. President. So I'm saying, if we are to go against the regulatory provisions, our regulatory and legal provisions that the chairperson of the Committee on Regulations has recalled, this would divide us within this House, because our debates would not have any legal basis. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. President. Mr. President.
Stand up.
Yes. Yeah. Mr. President, my honorable colleagues, there is a proper motion on ground. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not aware that this motion has been stepped down. And since there is a proper motion on ground, Mr. President, it is important that you rule on this matter. People have said so many things. We cannot wait, and we are already wasting time. We have only 1 hour to debate this motion. And the motion is properly on ground, and so many members have cleared it. I think it's very important that this motion is just debated once and for all, because it has not been stepped down, Mr. President, and you have the power to rule. Mr. President, I therefore urge that you control this debate.
Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order. Mr. President.
Monsieur le Président, Messieurs les députés.
Honorable members, I said there are pro and there are arguments that might create some division within this House. We are a continental parliament, and we are here to achieve the continental integration. If we start being divided because of positions, this is not good. So I can assure you that what I'm going to do here, I'll do it in conformity and in pursuance with our text. If there is a question here, a question of interpretation of the law, I will ask the question to those who are experts or specialized in law. So I'd rather invite you to have the debate, and then at the end of the day, I will ask someone of those who who crafted these texts to have a legal explanation, because those who drafted these texts have no passion, and they can bring us back on the right track. Therefore, this is what I'm going to do, that is to ask the experts to give us the right explanation and interpretation of this text. We cannot say that the Assembly of Heads of State is not sovereign. This is false. The legal council who drafted this text has drafted it on the basis of law. That is the spirit and the letter of the law. So let's have all the arguments, all the opinions, and then refer back to the people who crafted this text. So let me give the floor to Mr. Honorable Martin Chirisi from Burundi. I thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to react to the points on the motion that says that the amendment is compliant to the provisions of Article 12 of the Malabo Protocol. I think that this protocol is not yet implemented, therefore, and if this motion is voted, we need to delete this provision from the text. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Veronica Natalia Macamo from Mozambique. You have the floor.
Muito obrigada, Sr. Presidente. Em primeiro lugar, saudar Vossa Excelência pela condução dos trabalhos.
I thank you, Mr. President. I would like to commend our colleagues from the Committee on Regulations and for the contributions for the good of our continent and our people. You know that we have the possibility to discuss and to build on the experiences of the dignified children of Africa coming from all over the continent. Therefore, I think that this Parliament until 2015 have been implementing a principle, and this principle is there to ensure harmony in this House and for us to build on the capacities that exist over our continent. The substantive issue, Mr. President, is that this House make sure that this House is well managed, well administered, and that the people managing this House are skillful and have a wealth of experience, be it in the administration and otherwise. It is true that rotation is good, but it is also important to focus on skills and competence also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and may I thank the mover of this motion and quickly comment that Africa, if they hear us debating this motion of rotation, which enhances democracy on the continent, and being a continental parliament that should promote democracy, would certainly be baffled as to our seriousness in commitment to democracy, good governance, and transparency on the continent. I also want to thank the Rules Committee Chair for the steering work that is doing, very committed man. Thank you very much. But I just want to encourage the Rules Committee that when the chair gives an opinion in this House, it should be an opinion from the whole committee. I think that's the way we should operate. But without wasting time, Mr. President, I listened to all the arguments. For now, I propose that in terms of Rule 64.1, that we amend the motion. And I propose that in terms of that rule, I propose to amend the motion as follows: that this House uphold the resolution of 2007 with respect to the principle of rotation I so propose.
And I second, Mr. President, in terms of 64.5. Thank you.
Je donne la parole à l'honorable.
Now give the floor to Honorable Koko Agbo. I thank you, Mr. President. Based on the explanations provided by the chairperson of the Committee on Rules, I would like to ask that this motion be withdrawn simply because in his explanations he says that currently there are instruments or implementation decrees that are required to implement it. So to revisit rules of procedure today means that will enable to people to forget the lobbying that we have to conduct within our states for the ratification of the Malabo Protocol. So for me, we need therefore to just withdraw this motion. Thank you. Suleiman Sisi, Honorable Suleiman Sisi from Sierra Leone, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. This motion is a very good motion. Rotation must be put into our rules. Mr. President, we must set examples. This Parliament should set examples for others to follow. If we do not go by rotation, then it's going to be a problem. We condemn our African leaders for staying in power perpetually. We do not want the African Parliament to be like that. One term limit is enough so that the rotation could go around. As you well might know, during the last election of the president, we had heated arguments here on the question of rotation. And that wasn't implemented, and you were elected president of this assembly from Central African Republic. Now want it to become law, to be in our books, that rotation must be carried out so that other regions can benefit. But if we just leave it like that, it's not good for this Parliament. So let us set examples. I support this motion, and it should be put into our rules. Thank you, Mr. President.
And now I give the floor to Honorable Alfredo Bernard from Angola.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente.
I thank you, Mr. President. So I ask for the floor to say that we need to make sure that the structures of the Pan-African Parliament be properly operational and function properly. And it is important, therefore, that the Pan-African Parliament implements the principle of rotation. Because, Mr. President, this principle enables to set aside any subjectivity, this kind of subjectivity that we always find that always surrounds the electoral processes. Therefore, for the supreme interest of our Parliament, we need to implement this principle of rotation. I thank you very much. Honorable Godfrey Lugogo from Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also stand to support the motion and request that the motion be enshrined in our rules of procedure immediately. The reasons are simple, Mr. President. The rotation principle is a moral imperative that guarantees the democratic principle of shared leadership. It protects all parties against the dictatorship of the majority by the minority. Sorry, of the majority over the minority. Or the dictatorship of the big states over small states. Or the dictatorship of the economically or politically powerful over the less economically or politically powerful. The rotation principle is a democratic convention which is in accordance with the equality of leadership. It is in line with the principle of shared leadership or equality of leadership that the rotation principle is an acceptable practice in various organizations, the AU, the EU, regional and international organizations. We therefore should live by this moral imperative in a democratic dispensation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Honorable Sekou Fantamadi Traoré of Mali.
Merci.
Thank you, Honorable President. I might be repeating myself, but no one is against rotation. On the contrary, we all accept the principle of rotation. However, but we should not depart from principle. Our rules of procedure should be endorsed by something, and it is endorsed by the Malabo Protocol. And I said, and I repeat, the chairperson of the Committee on Rules also said that as long as our rules of procedure have not been, or our protocol has not been ratified by the heads of state, the principle of rotation will cause a problem. And we are the ambassadors here of our countries. Let us serve as ambassadors and champion our heads of state and ratify the protocol. And if we do not that, and if we want to depart from this principle, it will come back again like a boomerang. This is a risk. Thank you very much, Chair. President, I give the floor to Honorable Ahmad Tahir Ahmad from Chad. Thank you very much, Honorable President. The motion on the rotation of the presidency of the Pan-African Parliament tabled today makes reference to the protocol in it's Article 12.1. But as the protocol has not yet come into force, I consider that this is a very timely motion, and that is why I asked for it to be withdrawn. I give the floor to Honorable Thandi Cecilia Mamena from South Africa.
Dear President, I stand here to confirm the request that has been put in front of you. And it's either we do it now or perpetrating division. There's no need for that. Thanks.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. There will be no division. I give the floor to Honorable Dr. Delwa Kasire Kumukai from Chad.
Merci, Monsieur le...
Thank you, Honorable President. I was supposed to return to Chad yesterday already, but the issue raised here is of the utmost importance. So much so that I postponed my return in order to participate. And my concern is quite justified. We have been too passionate. This debate concerns each and every one of us. And it would have been much shorter if we were able to trust one another. Africa must be united, but we are divided. This Africa is divided here. We are being divided for our personal interests. It's not in the interest of Africa. If we were working in the interest of Africa, whether we change our procedure or not, the most important is that there is harmony and unity among us in Africa in terms of these positions that we entrust on one another. But I have the impression that, on the contrary, we are talking about these leadership positions, and I'm even ashamed. We talk about who should be there. No, this is not good. If we have a problem in our family, and if the solution to this problem will lead to division in the family, it's better not to discuss it.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Microphone.
Micro.
I'm referring to what was said by the chairperson of the Committee on Rules. I am a lawmaker. I'm also a legal expert teaching law at the university. But this current debate does not even refer to the document. We are just passionately debating. But if we limit ourselves to the law, as we claim we're doing, then we should just limit ourselves to what was said by the chairperson of the committee. It's based on that statement that we should respond. But if we react against the person that holds the law in this institution, we are not applying the law. Well, let us rather work in a spirit of fraternity and harmony, that together we can move forward and avoid issues of positions divide Africa. That is not in our interest. So I concur with the chairperson of the Committee on Rules. We must take into account what he says. If we want to serve the interest of Africa, I thank you.
La parole est à l'honorable.
Give the floor to Honorable Mai Mahmoud Ibrahim from Egypt.
Give up.
La parole est à l'honorable Bangani.
Give the floor to Honorable Ngani Mdluli from Swaziland.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I'm not going to say anything new, except for I want to echo the previous speakers on this motion that the principle of rotation should prevail, Mr. President. I'm just here to throw some weight so that we all realize that we really need the principle of rotation, because as a matter of fact, Mr. President, the issue of rotation means democracy. Since one of the core mandates of the Pan-African Parliament is to ensure democracy, good governance, and transparency, it is then imperative, really, Mr. President, that it begins with us. We need to be exemplary. If we are working on this issue of democracy and good governance, we have got to be seen practicing the very same principle, Mr. President. So, having said that, I think every member of this Honorable August House must be for the vote that we see this motion passing and seeing the light of day. As a matter of interest, once again, Mr. President, and moreover, I will be happy to see this principle of rotation being enshrined in our rules and beginning where it left off. Emphasis on beginning where it left off. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you. I give the floor to Honorable Royal Highness Princess Nsingesenge Dlamini from Swaziland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I cannot say it better than what the Honorable from Swaziland just said. I pretty much say the same thing. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Honorable Chen Chenamo from Zambia.
Zimbabwe.
Ah, Zimbabwe. Excuse, apologize. No,
point of order. Yes.
Please. No.
Honorable President, and esteemed members of this assembly, Africa is always berated with weak institutions. nearly every institution on this continent is weak. We have built institutions that depend on strongmen. And as we are trying to build cohesion, unity, solidifying unity on the African continent, we must pursue policies that accelerate that cohesion. What accelerate cohesion? It's the power to get and to live and to give to another one. That's cohesion. So I'm surprised that my brother from Chad is saying that if there is a problem in the family, you don't talk about it. No, we belong to an Africa where we talk about our problems. And rotation works in the benefit of everyone. Everyone will get a chance, everyone will have a chance to lead, everyone will have a chance to have a say, and therefore we will build that cohesion in trusting one another. Therefore, our Namibian position and my position is that we must enshrine the doctrine of cohesion in order to build a stronger institutional foundation. And no person can convince me otherwise that there is another way of doing it. Why is it at the executive level of the African Union, our presidents are busy with rotations? And here we are saying, let's not have rotation. Cohesion is built by bringing rotation, and rotation works in the interest of all Africans. I thank you.
Honorable Chen Chenamo Se Chitumbenge, de Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I fully support the motion on the principle of rotation. But the big question is, why should PAP be resisting the implementation of this motion when it was debated and approved before? It is highly undemocratic to resist the wishes of the majority. Even if this motion has not been put in the new protocol, we can still implement it now on a gentleman's agreement basis. PAP should not be well known for being an undemocratic organization. That gives PAP a bad image. We should all be busy making PAP relevant to the democratic needs and aspirations of the African people. I thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. I give the floor to Honorable Ernesto Joaquim Mulato from Angola.
Senhor Presidente.
Thank you, Honorable President. This debate reminds us of the time when we were children. When we were looking at the struggle between the group of Monrovia and Casablanca. Now, if our elders managed to overcome these problems and the African Union followed in this same way, we are here today. In fact, the collective is more valid than the individual. Even if we have lofty speeches, the president said something. He said that we should not be afraid to vote for rotation. The president said that after the debate, whatever the result might be, he said that he would consult with the African Union, who prepared the revision of the protocol. So I support this motion on rotation. Thank you for your attention. I give the floor to Honorable Aloy Kasingo from Namibia.
Excuse me. Excuse me. There's a mistake. Dear colleague, excuse me. I give the floor to Jamel Bandir Katari of Sarawi.
Shukran, Sayyid Rais.
Thank you, Honorable President. Firstly, because we have limited time, I will not take the floor right now. Thank you. I give the floor to Honorable Landilu Doro from Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support the motion. First and foremost, we must know that this motion or principle is not being addressed to a single person or a certain caucus. What we are saying is that if the heads of state and government honor this principle, where does PAP, an organ of the AU, get the powers to ignore the same? As a parliament, we are allowed and have the powers to make such an amendment. All organs of the AU should therefore religiously adhere to this principle. There is nothing special about PAP. So the leadership of PAP should not be a preserve for one or two regions only. This is the reason why I support this motion. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Honorable Luis Reis Paulo from Angola.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. The arguments that I want to put forward have already been mentioned by the speakers who came before me. But in any case, I would like to say that I support the motion. Thank you. I'll give the floor to Honorable Kasinga from Namibia.
In supporting the motion as amended before us, Honorable President, we have to recognize that in each region of African Union, there are men and women who have got experience and skills to manage these affairs. And also not to forget those men and women who have already managed the situation. The cardinal question is, what are we going to win if we amend our rules to ensure that the president is rotated? We are going to win a lot. Cohesion, unity, and democracy. And the people outside us, they will take serious that these people are very serious. Reason has been expressed to say we must wait for the ratification of the protocol. For how long? Maybe it's going to take 20 years. But this is the issue within our powers. Colleague, let's do it. And moreover, we have already passed a resolution to recognize the previous presidents and the vice president. That's the mere fact that we are not going to say that this president is bad, but to make use of the reservoir of experiences within our regions. Mind you, Pan-African Parliament has, giving birth to 3 presidents of Mali, Republic of Namibia, and the previous former president of Ghana. So we will do it. We have nothing to lose. Thank you.
Merci. Je donne la...
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Honorable Eshawa Victor from Swaziland.
To take this opportunity to say, as members of this August House, let us fully support this motion. And I want to urge each one of us inside the House to vote for this motion, because it's one of the best democratic instruments that we can have as PAP. Mr. President, as I speak here, I'm governed by the rules of procedure, not the new protocol. What I'm trying to say, Mr. President, is that so long as the new protocol is not in place, we should see to it that the rules of procedure that established us and that we are utilizing today, they are up to the standard. They are somewhere to uphold and kind of entrace the good procedural method that we have in Africa. Mr. President, before I sit down, I want, in terms of Rule 64, which the Chief cited in terms of amending the motion on the table, I want to second him in terms of Rule 64.5, because we cannot leave that vacuum hanging over. The way it says, any amendment to the motion which a member wishes to propose under this rule may be moved and seconded at the time during the debate of the motion. So I want to make sure, and I am proposing to second that motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Honorable Maria Caterina from Angola.
Not in the chamber. Le temps est à l'honorable.
Then I give the floor to Honorable Nelson do Rosario Brito from Cape Verde.
Son.
Senhor Presidente, eu prescinto.
President, I'm not taking the floor now. Thank you. I give the floor to Cynthia Mamle Morrison from Ghana.
La parole est à l'honorable.
I give the floor to Honorable Faisal Tibini from Tunisia. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate and the Merciful, welcome to everyone. We are discussing the issue of the rotation of the President of the Pan-African Parliament. We have a proposal, and the Bureau received this, and this is why we're debating this in plenary. But we cannot make a decision without the decision of the President. You know, we have all respect for the African Union, and we cannot run counter to the provisions of the African Union. If we want to wait for the Malacca Protocol, well, will we have to wait until all countries ratify this protocol? You know, some countries do not see the interest of having this parliament. They are countries that are campaigning for elections. And we need them to enjoy their rights in this parliament. It's true that some regions cannot enjoy these rights. Therefore, we think that we need this rotation at the helm of this Pan-African Parliament. Otherwise, there will be regions that will withdraw. There are regions that are sidelined. There's several dimensions to this issue, and that is why we think we need this principle to enable all regions to hold the presidency. No one will withdraw from the Pan-African Parliament. We did not create the Pan-African Parliament in this chamber. The decision must be taken at the highest level for you to withdraw. You can withdraw as an individual, but I don't think the heads of state for an issue that divided anyone will withdraw from the parliament. I give the floor to Honorable Sinia Ahmed from Sahrawi Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Honorable President. Allow me to say that we all agree that there can be no democracy, cohesion, or integration without justice. Justice is the foundation of consensus, democracy, and cohesion. And that is why this time round we have a political position that is in line with our legislation. There is the resolution of the Parliament of 2007. There's also the protocol, which is being ratified and will come into force. And this is this resolution, this motion is in line with the spirit of the protocol. But there are political principles that require justice, democracy, and cohesion. And for this reason, we should implement the resolution of 2007 and also take the necessary measures to put this resolution in practice. This is in accordance with the protocol that will be ratified. And so I won't want to belabor this issue, but I consider that if we depart from this principle, we will find challenges, whether it's at the level of the committee or at the level of the presidency. This principle should apply to all organs. I give the floor to Honorable Bangira Anifa from Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I support the motion on the principle under which it has been moved. And from the debaters, I realize, Mr. President, that this motion was debated in the past. But the reason that now it has come back to be retabled is, I think at that time there was no consensus. But taking into effect of the honorable colleagues that have debated, I am seeing the consensus is emerging. And in my own opinion, I think there is nothing wrong if we are moving this motion under the spirit of togetherness, good governance, and good democracy. Building strong institutions is in the core of enhancement of the same principle. I therefore support the motion.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Honorable Lucia Maria Mendes Gonçalves from Cape Verde.
Muito obrigada, Sr. Presidente.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. Now, taking into account what was said before, I will pass. Thank you. Give the floor to Honorable Dariman Musa from Sahrawi Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Honorable President. I have been listening closely to my colleagues, and I also listened to what was said by the chairperson of the Committee on Rules, who tabled this motion. And I concur with him. I also agree with the second proposal he made, that we implement what was adopted in 2007 and enshrine that in the rules of procedure of the Pan-African Parliament. That is the principle of rotation of the presidency. It's on that ground, if we agree, we will speak with one voice, because we have not heard any member of parliament refusing that principle. All have been speaking in favor of the principle of rotation. So I also agree with the adoption of this principle. Thank you, Honorable President.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Honorable President. Firstly, allow me to express my support for this motion on the rotation of the presidency. Mr. President, our parliament strives to entrench democracy and to preserve the principles that will benefit the continent. And today we are supporting this motion that will help us to achieve these goals, because the rotation is a principle of the African Union, and the activities of the African Union are based on this principle. That is why the adoption of this principle is in line with the pursuance of the objectives of the African Union. Mr. President, we are in favor of working towards the ratification of our protocol. If the protocol is ratified, but we are divided on the very contents of this protocol, well, that is a contradiction. So I fully support this motion. Thank you, Honorable President. I give the floor to Honorable Mohamed Kassa Untim from Mauritius.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have listened carefully to all honorable members.
think there is a consensus that we need to have rotation. The only issue, I understand it, and I thank the Honourable Chairperson of the Rules Committee, the only issue is whether this House, this Parliament, can amend its internal rules, or does it have to wait for the ratification of the protocol before it can do that? I think this is a legal issue that has to be carefully debated by lawyers. The only thing the House can do is make a recommendation that this is the opinion of the House, that we want the protocol to be amended or not, and then it would be a legal issue as to whether this can happen before or we need to wait for the protocol. My personal view as a lawyer is that if there is consensus among the House, it should not be a problem, because unless there is a contradiction between what we are amending and what is in the existing terms, then it is a problem. But I'll leave it in the hands of the legal advisors to see whether it is possible or not.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Honorable Gabriel Limis from Liberia.
Thank you, Presiding. I'm a little bit confused on the procedure that we are following, because someone has to convince me that Parliament does not have the power to make its internal rule. But if this is a universal principle that guides parliamentary function and functionalities, then we must understand that insofar as this Parliament, the plenary in its entirety in 2007, voted on a matter that was never reversed, that we should now say that we have to maybe take a vote and propose it to somebody else, it beats my reasoning. Because I believe that this Parliament and Parliament world over make its own rule. Parliament is never controlled by any external rule, no. The Parliament makes its own rule as to our internal operation, and I believe that this, with respect to rotation, lies within our authority, because it is affecting us as parliamentarians. It's not affecting any Oxford president. So on this note, Presiding, I'm convinced that you've used your wisdom in dealing with a lot of these issues. And on this one, as it appertains to the unity of this Parliament, I will recommend strongly to your reasoning and to the rest of the colleagues here that we adopt this resolution and ensure that the contents of the resolution are engrafted within our rules of procedure, so that we can have the rotational movement of power that will enhance the working of this Parliament. I so submit. Thank you.
Merci.
I thank you. I now give the floor to
Mr. President, I want to inform members, Mr. President and honorable members, I want to inform this House that in our functions are very clear. Rule 4F, that this House has the power to draft, examine, and adopt its budget and its rules of procedure. So, Mr. President and honorable members of the House, we have the powers to draft, examine, and adopt our rules of procedure. Mr. President, in addition, the functions of the Bureau is very clear in our rules here, that the Bureau is responsible for any other matters in accordance with the directives issued by this Parliament. So if this Parliament issues any directive, it is the Bureau to implement without any addition, without any revision, the decision of this Parliament. And therefore, I want to inform members who has been speaking that we are moving in the right direction. We have the powers to adopt, examine, and review our own rules. Mr. President.
Point of order. Point of order. Please. We were heading for debate. I don't know what you want to say with your point of order. Well, craft a rules of procedure in relation to something specific. We are a legislative house, and we craft our rules of procedure based on our constitution. We cannot say the opposite. Point of order, Mr. President. Yes, sir. Go ahead, madam. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that the problem here is that we all agree that we need to adopt the principle of rotation. We do agree with the principle, but when it comes to modalities, we have a committee on rules that has given us the methodology. Why aren't we following it? Thank you. Thank you. I now give the floor to Honorable Bilo Keram from Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support the motion as amended by Chief Chirumbura earlier. Mr. President, I think this matter is very clear, as Honorable Felix Okoto of Uganda has just clarified. This house, like any other house, for example, in Kenya, the parliament is governed by standing orders. The standing orders simply means rules of procedures. And these rules are done and prepared and can be amended by the House. It does not require any other law or any other authority to determine. Mr. President, even if this protocol of Malabo is not in place, as we speak now, we are being governed, and this House is in existence, and is being governed and is operating on the basis of the rules of procedures. So the motion is simply asking that the existing rules be amended by this House. And I strongly support it, because, Mr. President, this is about negotiated democracy. We must appreciate that consensus in democracy is critical, particularly in our context in the African countries, because it enhances internal equity, it enhances cohesion, as has been said earlier, and it also ensures that countries are treated fairly and equally where necessary. This is why the same principle has been applied by countries at African Union and other organs of African Union, as we all know. So I think it is very critical that we have this motion that was passed in 2007 implemented as proposed now, so that we can go ahead in the next elections for the presidency and other offices of the Bureau and other organs of this House. We can have this principle.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Senator Jacqueline from Rwanda. I give the floor to Dr. Fernando José de Franca Dias Vandeme from Angola.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
I thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like, first of all, to say
la rotativité. D'autant plus que nous qui avons été les premiers députés.
We have been the first parliamentarians of the Pan-African Parliament, and we have been somewhat upset by the fact that the election of the president didn't abide by this principle. The principle that was adopted then stated that the future president cannot be from the headquarters of the parliament. Therefore, the Constitutive Act is a treaty, the protocol is a treaty, and since the circumstances have changed somewhat, and even though this is not enshrined in our fundamental text, we need to accept the principle of rotation. All the more as the President Shisano, who helped or contributed to the inception of this parliament, accepted that the president be elected separately and the other members elected later on, which was not a good principle. I do agree with the principle, but all the members of the Bureau need to be under the same conditions. I now give the floor to Honorable Abdulrazak Sanamdas from Nigeria.
Mr. President, I want to support this very motion. Mr. President, I want to say that the difference between democracy and other forms of government, such as dictatorship and authoritarianism, is the existence of the legislature. We symbolize democracy, and therefore, it is only in this kind of parliament, in an institution like this, that we will make democracy to thrive. And therefore, I want to say, Mr. President, that the world has moved forward. Just last week, a 39-year-old boy is already, is already a president because the opportunity is there. I am 48, yet I'm a member of parliament. How I wish I will be a president very soon. Mr. President, I want to tell you with all seriousness that just like my colleague from Kenya said, we have a standing order also in Nigeria that guides our rules. In fact, my Nigerian colleague is here. We have amended our own standing rule to suit our own operation. And it has worked because it is only the rules that guide only parliamentarians. It's not guiding anybody in the executive or any market woman outside. It is only us. Since it is only us, and we agreed to that, there was no problem, Mr. President. And I want to close by saying, Mr. President, that just like my colleague from Chad, who said that he decided not to go to Chad because of the importance of this very motion, I want to tell you, Mr. President, also because of the importance of this, I decided to fly from Nigeria to come yesterday to attend this. The difference is that I am also here to support this motion. I thank you, Mr. President, for giving me this opportunity.
Je donne la parole à l'honorable.
The floor now to Honorable Munji from Tunisia. Point of order. Mr. President, I would like to submit on behalf of the Group of Central Africa the following motion. The principle of electing PAP bureaus should be conducted on the principle of rotation. This bureau is elected for a tenure of 3 years that can be renewable once, as stated by the protocol. If we go beyond, we will contradict the protocol. Therefore, we are in favor of the principle of the motion, but based on the protocol that envisions a 3-year election, that it can be renewed only once. Thank you. Thank you. I now give the floor to Honorable David Ernest Silinde. Oh, sorry. Honorable Munji, you have the floor. I thank you, Mr. President. I assume that we have not reached any consensus yet. We are rather divided. We are in a position where some of us have in favor of rotation immediately, and others who would prefer to defer the principle of rotation until the protocol is ratified, which might be done in 2020, 2030, we never know. Therefore, I think that this position that is allegedly based on a legal text is a political position, actually. and they push for the non-respect for this motion. So therefore, please, Mr. President, I would like to ask you to be a loyal judge. And this parliament should give the evidence that it is a democratic parliament, a parliament that respects the Charter on Democracy that is respected by the African Union. I ask this parliament to be our expectations, that is to be a democratic house that lead with example throughout the continent. I am in favor of the rotation, and I do support this motion, and I wish that you guide us and encourage us that it be voted in this plenary. Honorable member, you are player and referee yourself. You need to moderate your words. Sorry, you be more moderate than that. I now recognize the honorable from Celinde from
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone.
What? Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. David Ernest Sindile of Tanzania. Silinde of Tanzania.
You forgot.
Excuse me.
Kuna shida. Mheshimiwa Rais, na mimi ninaunga mkono hoja ya mzunguko kuhusu nafasi ya urais katika bunge letu. Mheshimiwa Rais, ni kwamba
translation.
Yeah, they have to put it.
Interpretation, please.
And I will speak Swahili so that we have to learn it.
Honorable President. Hello. Are you getting the translation, please? Hello? The idea as far as the rotation is concerned in the parliament is very important. And I'm saying that what is important here, when someone comes to our parliament and question why our parliament is not for the rotation of the presidency, which reason are we going to give? If all other bodies of the African Union are practicing this role of rotation, for instance, East African Legislative Assembly, SADC, and other ECOWAS countries, as well as those Arab countries which are in Africa, all these countries are for the rotation principle. But if we bring the reason that we have not ratified the protocol, this is not the right reason to give this parliament. I think we should start from the scratch, that our internal rules of procedures are the ones to be used, and other countries will be easy for them to ratify the protocols, and if we have these rules. So allow me to say that legally, all legal necessities come when we have a problem. Now, for instance, here we have a challenge or a problem. That's why we need to have rules of procedures, because next year we have elections of the president. And it's not that this is going to be under the African Union. It is within our rules of procedures which guide us members of this parliament. So I do second this idea of rotation so that we move forward. Thank you very much. Asante sana. Sasa nampa nafasi Mheshimiwa Kamanda kutoka Sierra Leone. Mheshimiwa Rais, naomba niunge mkono swala la mzunguko, na msimamo wangu lazima ni endeleze kuunga mkono swali hili, na niseme kwamba
Mr. President, honorable members, Presidency has the force of law. If we start to throw out motions that have been passed in this House, then definitely in time to come there will be confusion in this House. So I go by the motion. I go by the motion of the chief that we amend this motion before us. And if you take listen keenly to the explanation of the deputy of the chairperson of rules, he did say, if I got him right, that the last motion lacked modalities for the implementation, and that they are reminding this House of that motion. So I go by the motion that we really amend the last motion wherein we put in place modalities to implement that particular law that has been passed into this House. And mark you, whatever motion is passed in this House becomes law and should be implemented by the Bureau, as said in the article that have been mentioned or quoted by my colleague. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Honorable Abdoulamour from Niger. Thank you, Mr. President. While going through this motion on the rotation of the presidency that's tabled before us, I note that it is said that noting that the convention of rotation of the position of the president of the PAP has been in practice since the inception of the PAP, and then says, recognizes that the African Union honors the practice of rotation in leadership of its organs. And then it says that the amendment proposed is as prescribed in Article 12 of the Malabo Protocol, which is not yet operational. Mr. President, since the proposal on rotation is not against the Malabo Protocol, and I think, I don't remember whether it's the third or the fourth president, how these, the previous presidents have been elected. Was it on the basis of the protocol, the Malabo Protocol? So, Mr. President, inasmuch as the motion does not contradict the Malabo Protocol, I think that common sense would dictate that the Parliament that is sovereign and can revisit its rules of procedure does so in full responsibility, all the more as we will do so in pursuance of the Article 12. Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Honorable Pina Sanchez from Cape Verde.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente. Sr. Presidente, eu vou...
I thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to make a comment on the legal point of view because I'm a jurist. Some said that each region appoints one president and two candidates for the vice presidency. Rule 10 says that the tenure or the term of office of the Bureau is for 3 years, but no reference is made whatsoever on the rotation of the presidency. However, I think that none of us can go against this principle. And but some just doubts about having it immediately implemented. Since we have the Malabo Protocol that is not yet ratified, and some states have ratified it and others not yet. And this protocol enshrines the principle of rotation. Therefore, if the head is not ratified by the heads of state, we have the legitimacy to revise our rules of procedure. Do we have this legitimacy? Are we in a position to do so? This is my question. Since our parliaments have not yet ratified the protocol, let's discuss this matter quietly, serenely, and we should not challenge the principle of hierarchy in our institution. Honorable Nwandua from Cameroon, you have the floor. Mr. President, I've read out this motion that has been handed over to you, Mr. President. Thank you. I now give the floor to Honorable Ngongo Luwu from DRC. Mr. President, I'm really surprised that those who are in this room are legislators. We are all legislators. In our country, it is us who enact laws. In none of our countries can we have a legal text on the basis of a parliamentarian or proposal on a law that is not yet that has not yet been passed, which depends on countries. Some countries, we say, adopted. We talk about adopting a law, ratifying, adopt, or signed by the President of the Republic. It depends on the country. So it's only when the President of the Republic in my country sign it, even though the Parliament has already voted the law, it is only when the President of the Republic signs the law that it enters into force. Therefore, I'm surprised that we, as parliamentarians and legislators, we are speaking of a future text that will be ratified in the future and say that this text can already be implemented. Why have our heads of states felt the need to have such the principle of rotation implemented, since if this text enabled it, we wouldn't have had to include it in the new protocol. I think that this protocol will be ratified in maybe a few months, a few weeks, or a few years, and it is exactly as the case in our countries. When the text is voted by the assemblies, the parliaments, we wait for the signing, the signature of the heads of state. We cannot enforce laws that are not yet passed. Thank you. And I'll give the floor to Honorable El Gandhi Mustafa from Egypt. In the name of Allah, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk about the spirit and the letter of the law. There are judges when they have a cause tabled before us or a case tabled before us. They take the decision with the spirit of the law, and the spirit, as you said, Mr. President, as you said, is the rotation, meaning that everyone has the right to be in your position, Mr. President, one day, as well as the Vice President, because it's one Africa, one voice. So if I take the northern part, I would have wished to have Mr. Laskri here to take the floor. And if we look at the others, we have a great number of or more countries, so there is no justice. I'm not going to speak about Malabo. I'll refer to history. History is very simple. When we have Mongela, who was president, and then the whole parliament asked for rotation. What has been applied? It was the spirit of the law that was applied then. And then we had president that were from then the west, center, and then now we have the north and the south. What is the problem? Do you think the northern and the southern parts of Africa do not have the right to have president? I don't think so. So I think that you have still 1 year left, Mr. President, 1 year left to work. I don't want us to just to quarrel, since we still have 1 year, 1 long year left. I do trust the structures, and they will be enforcing the spirit of the law. We cannot work with dead laws. We work with living laws, and the living laws is you, ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians in this House. So I do fully agree with the rotation, but against division, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, and I give the floor now to Honorable Rumba Rukaya from Burkina Faso. I thank you, Mr. President. Since this morning, I've been listening to all our colleagues, and some of us speaking about a personal interest, that is a personal position that is of interest for our parliamentarians. I think it's too early to talk about rotation or limitation, we need first to focus on the ratification of the Malabo Protocol. This is a priority, and we need to have this debate around the ratification. And then, once it's ratified, we can discuss of other things. Otherwise, we are beating around the bush and we are turning in circles. And I don't think such a debate has its raison d'être. We need first to focus on the ratification. Thank you. I thank you very much. Honorable Midi Sidibé from Mali, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. I think that in 2014, the principle of rotation as it was accepted by the Chamber through a motion in 2007 should have been evoked when we elected the presidents and vice presidents. Now, given that that was not the case, and that it is common practice at the level of the African Union, we are here, and Mali already ratified the protocol, and that means that we have decided in favor of a rotation. So let us quickly change matters. We are fighting for rotation. Yes, it's true that rotation is a standard practice and it should be accepted. But let us rather fight harder. The energy that we're spending here for rotation, why do we not spend this energy to get the Malabo Protocol ratified? Sierra Leone, Mali, Togo, Burkina Faso, these countries have already ratified the Malabo Protocol. Let us follow in their footsteps. But when we say microphone.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, we have already spent 2 hours. Now we are breaching our own rules on this issue. We have already debated for 2 years, but the rules of procedure that we often quote is not respected. I give the floor to Ivan Roku from Equatorial Guinea.
Ivan.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. My name is John. John. Thank you very much, Mr. President. What I believe is that here we all are lawyers, and we cannot be passionate in our discussion. We need to follow the letter of the law in our debate within the confinements of justice and a cause that we have to debate according to our rules of procedure. Regarding rotation, we all will have the same direction. So I do follow this motion. I agree with the motion. And because this is the cause of our different points of view, but we need to follow our rules of procedure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Joachim Gilles from Seychelles.
Seychelles, nobody?
Yes. I'm here.
Yes, you have the floor.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. President, and good morning to you all. Taking into consideration that it is our first time in this assembly here, we take it that there are not much that we've been able to gather, and there might be some points that we would not be familiar with in terms of documents and content. But we've been very attentive, Mr. Chair, since we've been around here. And we would like to contribute this morning on the matter before the House. The subject matter is rotation. And we've been discussing on its merit and principles. And we would like to go on records that Seychelles is party to the principles of rotation. Furthermore, we would like to submit that we have concluded that there are some contradictions, and we might be running out of time in terms of our own rules and procedures, which I think it is moving fast in respect to the protocol of Malabo that has been a conflicting subject in itself. And I've seen in some of the documents, Mr. Chair, that our composition, powers, functions, and organization will derive from the protocol of Malabo. Now, this document has
Thank you, dear colleague. La parole est à l'honorable.
I give the floor to Honorable Abdul Karim from Sudan.
أعتذر للمشاركة.
Merci beaucoup, cher collègue. La parole est à l'honorable.
Thank you, colleague. I give the floor to Felix Uko-Unyon from Uganda.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I think our rules of procedure is very clear, honorable members. I have been reliably informed by members that this motion was passed in 2007. And if it was passed in 2007, our rules of procedure is very clear on the powers and functions of the president. In E, it is very clear that when a resolution or any decision is made by this parliament, it is the president to follow up the implementation of the decision of this parliament. So if it was passed in 2007, therefore it is only a matter of parliament here passing a resolution encouraging the president to implement the decision that was passed in 2007. It is simple and very clear that the matter was concluded in 2007, it was not implemented by the then president and the bureau, and therefore it is the wisdom of this parliament now to direct that the president implements the decision of this house that was passed in 2007. Simple and very clear. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Honorable Jacqueline Mungi from Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to commend my colleagues who have already echoed their voices in regards to this debate. Mr. President, I thank the colleague who brought this motion because I know that next year when we go for elections, it will now not bring any issues like we had before. Just to inform the previous predecessor, when we debated this motion, it was not resolved, and I think in this form of a motion that is presented today, we will be able to pass a resolution at the end of this session saying that we amend the issue of rotation. But honorable colleagues, Mr. President, our rules can change from time to time, and the orders to amend or to re-amend the rules is bestowed on us, the members of parliament. Today, the rules, the protocol is in place, but to amend the rules permanently, our role, because these are rules that are going to guide our day-to-day work. So today the motion is in place, the presidency to be rotation, I think it's in good faith, and we must all commend this. So for me, Your Excellency, Mr. President, I'm fully for this motion based on our guiding documents, which are the rules, and for unity in the continent, it would be very prudent if we rotated this portfolio so that all regions are comfortable. Merci beaucoup, President.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Honorable Betty from Nigeria.
Mr. President, I've listened carefully to contributions from members today, and it is a unanimous decision of members of parliament that we rotate the presidency. And we seem to be in some disagreement as to our procedures on how to do this amendment. And that's why we keep going back to the Malabo Convention. And I want to take us to page 59 of our rules. Rule 93, page 54, Rule 93. It says, any member may propose amendment to these rules, including the appendices, by forwarding such proposal to the Bureau, which shall consider and refer it to the Permanent Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Discipline for report to Parliament. Amendments to these rules shall be adopted if we can secure votes of 2/3 majority of all parliamentarians present. Reading this and looking at this motion is to amend a part of our rules. And our rules gives us the procedure for the amendment. So for me, the next thing for us to do is put this into vote and amend the rules. Thank you very much.
Now, je passe la parole.
I now give the floor to Honorable Conde Aliou from Guinea.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Honorable President. After having listened to most of the speakers before me, I believe that most members of Parliament are in favor of rotation, and given that it's already 2017, according to good practice, we should truly instate the principle of rotation at the level of our institution. However, the challenge we're facing is to define how to do it. Those who spoke earlier have been reading parts of the rules of procedure, according to which we need a 2/3 majority. Our organic laws in our country are also voted by 2/3. But whatever the law might be, if we want to make amendments, these are determined by the Constitution. And here, the Constitution is represented by the Malabo Protocol, which is not yet ratified. That is my concern. So I am rather upset by the fact that the proposal comes from the Permanent Committee on Rules. So what do we do now? That is my concern. But apart from that, we all agree on this principle. But is there not a legal challenge? Are we taking a decision that is in line with our Constitution? That is the challenge we're facing. Thank you.
Close.
The general debate is closed.
Okay.
My name is on the list. Suleiman. Go ahead, you have the floor, Honorable. You too, Honorable. Thank you very much. I must admit that I am quite ashamed today. I'm ashamed of this gathering. In fact, I didn't even want to come this morning, but it's actually a coincidence that I came and I'm part of this debate. Why am I ashamed? Because there's a legal expert who spoke, and the only person who had the courage to draw our attention to what we are trying to impose here. Because this is like a coup, a de facto coup.
Désolé.
I apologize, but I believe you had the opportunity to speak.
President.
Yes.
Who is asking for the floor? All of you had the opportunity to speak, and I say and I repeat, the fundamental text that we should base ourselves on is the protocol that has not yet been ratified. And I am requesting, please, honorables,
Yes. Point of order. Attendez, je vais vous redonner la parole.
you will have the floor. First, the point of order.
Order.
Yes.
Mr. President, I'm raising on a procedural matter and an order. for the honorable colleague who is holding the floor to insinuate one, on how he's ashamed of this gathering of 54 countries. Two, on how he refers to a Malabo protocol, which is still guiding us today. And three, Mr. President, aware that the amended protocol by the heads of state has not yet been ratified. It's not in place.
Monsieur le Président, ce n'est pas une motion d'ordre.
This is not a point of order, Honorable President. Point of order. Please sit down, Honorable. Please sit down, Honorable.
President.
Madam.
Please sit down, Honorable. I am the President and I ask you to sit down. Point of order, Honorable President.
Is the honorable colleague.
Madame, veuillez vous asseoir.
Please sit down, Honorable. Point of order. Please wait, says the President. No, please, let each and everyone speak. You can speak freely if you want. But let us avoid all these incidents. We have already debated for 2 hours. Let the people speak freely. We have points of order left, right, and center.
Vous avez la parole, honorable.
You have the floor, Honorable.
Can the honorable member withdraw that we are staging a coup here? Can he withdraw that before we proceed? We cannot tolerate that, Mr. President. Thank you.
Why? Merci. Voilà un point.
Thank you very much. That is a point of order. I will request that. Not withdrawing these words, because I'm responsible for what I said.
Parole.
Have the floor, says the President. What I would like to reaffirm here, and you said that we agree on the principle of rotation. However, before we implement it, as someone said before me, we need to abide by what is decided in our fundamental texts and our basic documents. So I don't understand why we're in such a rush to adopt a motion if we have not yet ratified the protocol. So I ask that all the countries who have not ratified the protocol make the necessary arrangements. You as members of parliament, the next session, then it can be implemented. If it's ratified, then we can talk about the rotation. Thank you very much, as the President. Honorable Belumbi Francis from Equatorial Guinea.
Buenos días, Honor.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Mr. President, we have listened carefully the debate. Our worry is the same as the one that has expressed before. It's also regarding the jurisprudence and procedure. We think that rotation is good. However, I don't think that nobody will be against this, but we need to avoid setting precedents, not just because we have an idea. We need to leave behind procedures. As legislators, we need to follow the law and follow procedures set by law, because that's our way. And what I see here, there is a historical precedent. In 2007, it was necessary to establish rotation. That was debated, and that was agreed upon in this parliament. Then, during the document of the Protocol of Malabo, this was taken into consideration. That is why we need to wait for the implementation of this protocol. But independently, there are some interpretation problems regarding the Protocol of Malabo, because in the English version, there is no provision the aspect of rotation. Microphone.
Yes. You want the floor, Honorable? That is the last speaker.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Honorable President. The very last is the President. I heard a colleague say that he was ashamed and that made the people react. Well, rather, let's move on. Let us not beat around the bush, about the bush. Well, the procedure is just as important as the end result. If the result is rotation, then we're all in agreement. But the procedure is just as important. We have to comply with the legal foundations that will take us to that rotation. And that is why I maintain that the protocol be ratified before we talk about this motion. Thank you. Dear colleagues, this brings us to the end of the debate. I would like to thank you for your contributions that I have been following with keen interest, but not with passion, not with any bias. The provisions of Rule 93 of our Rules of Procedure
of Rule arising terms of Rule 60.
Madam.
Honorable, please. I gave you the opportunity to speak. Please sit down.
President, I rise in terms of Rule 66(3).
Madam, c'est vous qui avez...
Honorable, you tabled the motion. Please allow me to speak.
Allocated for the debate before the question is put to the House. I am standing on Rule 66(3). The rule,
Madame, je n'ai pas encore intervenu.
I have not yet spoken, says the President. I also have the right to speak.
Upon the mover to reply at the end of the period allocated for debate, and then you can put the question to the House. So I request respectfully, Mr. President,
Monsieur,
the opportunity
Madame,
to use
Madame.
this.
Honorable, I want to quote Rule 93 of our Rules of Procedure to prove that the Bureau and myself, we are not obstructing what's happened. What does Rule 93 say? Any member may propose amendments to these rules, including the appendices, by forwarding such proposal to the Bureau, which shall consider and refer it to the Permanent Committee on Rules, Privileges and Discipline for report to Parliament. We have not respected these provisions. Now, at the outset, I could have rejected it, but because people might criticize me, I opened the debate. You're a member of the committee. Please read the rules of procedure. This is the procedure that should have been followed. And now, in this specific case, Rule 4.2, for amendments to the rules of procedure, we need the presence of 2/3. This is a motion. We can adopt it, but to amend it, we need 2/3 of members. So I don't want to divide the Pan-African Parliament. I don't want us to put this to the vote. I have listened to all of you. We all agree on the principle of rotation. This principle cannot be implemented as adopted here. We need to define the modalities of this principle. And as soon as it's adopted, well, we will start from scratch because the law is not retroactive. Dear colleagues, let us not be divided. I propose that we refer this to the Legal Council of the African Union for opinion, and that opinion will guide us. This is the right decision to avoid us from being divided. Let us act in the spirit of Pan-Africanism. Do not target Nkodo, do not target the region. Let us have the spirit of Pan-Africanism prevail. Thank you.
Address you on a point of order. I'd like to address you, Mr. President, on a point of order. When a motion is debated, it should be voted upon. There were amendments to this motion which has not yet been put to the House. You are entitled, sir, once the motion is put to the House, together with the amendments, to then invoke the rule you talk to about now. But you have to complete, and as a Member of Parliament, I'm sure you know that this prevails in all parliaments worldwide, you have to complete the task at hand, which is a motion. So the motion has been debated. You have not given me the opportunity as the mover of the motion to conclude the debate, which is not procedural. And you have to put the amendments to the amendments to the motion to the House. Once that is done and a resolution is taken, then only 93 is invoked. I stand.
Madame la Présidente.
Honorable. Rule 93 could have been a prior issue, and that is according to the rules. If the people ask me here, well, where is the report that you've put to the Bureau? This is something that should have been done beforehand.
Motion.
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Point of procedure.
Président.
Point of procedure, President. Procedure.
Order, Mr. President.
Procédure.
Procedure.
C'est lui ou c'est moi?
Oui, c'est vous.
Who has the floor?
Mr. President, let me rise on a point of order. My name is Bill Okero from Kenya. Mr. President, Parliament does not debate in vain. When a motion is submitted to a bureau, the bureau cannot bring a motion to the House if there are questions regarding the validity of the motion. If a motion has been brought before this House, has been approved by the Bureau, Mr. President, it means that motion has been examined in the legal aspects of it has been examined, and it has been brought before the House, and it's a valid motion. After the debate of the members, you cannot again tell the House that that motion was not valid or is not legal or there are other conditions. Mr. Speaker, it means the House acted in vain for 2 hours. So it's really not appropriate procedure. Mr. Speaker, is it in order to take this House for granted?
Je donne la parole à...
I now give the floor. Yes, please go ahead. Honorable President, I am surprised by the sentiment expressed here. President, we're not talking about interests. The text that governs us now is this basic documents. I can't quote the future protocol. If you look at around you, most of the documents don't have both texts here. If they had both here, they cannot read the white alone. No, they should rather read the black one, the basic documents that is in force. And in this text that is currently in force, Honorable President, I would like to ask the Bureau, how many of us are present here? How many are present here? I will continue once we know how many members of Parliament are present. All the members of Parliament.
Non, s'il vous plaît. Je veux savoir combien nous sommes.
I want to know how many we are here.
Tous les parlementaires ici, tous les...
Point of information. All the members of Parliament. I want to know how many are we in total.
Monsieur le Président.
Honorable President, I have the floor.
Je voudrais avoir l'information et puis je vais...
I'm asking for information and then I'll proceed.
Je ne sais pas si les services peuvent nous aider. 105. Monsieur le...
105. Well, President, we can now conclude the debate because if we are not 2/3 of all the members of Parliament, we cannot even consider this motion. Thank you. Point of information.
Du bruit sur un nombre.
President, we are heading towards a debate that will cause us to hit a wall, and that is not good for our House. It is true that in such an institution, the debate is the rule, but the debate must take place in line with the text governing the institution. Now, we are heading towards a confusion. There are two things that we should separate. There's a debate on the motion on the one hand, and then the amendment of the rules of procedure. These are two different issues. Currently, we are debating a motion tabled by a colleague and another seconded. But let us conclude this debate. Well, the rules of procedure are very clear on that. And following the debate, the President gives the floor to the author of the motion. The author of the motion takes the floor, and then the President concludes the debate with a vote. And then we talk about voting on the motion. We're not voting on the amendment of the rules of procedure, because in the motion we do not have the text of an amendment, so we're mainly voting on the motion. It means that we've adopted the principle of including this motion in the rules of procedure. And then you can entrust the mission to the author of the motion to draft an amendment to be brought to the rules of procedure. And it's only then that we follow the provisions of Rule 93. That means the author of the motion who drafted the text then transmits it to the Bureau. The Bureau decides on the relevance of bringing this draft motion to the Committee on Rules. That is what Rule 93 says. So let us not mistake these two issues. Let us first conclude the debate on the motion, and then we will talk about the amendment to the rules of procedure. Thank you, Chairperson. I now give the floor to Honorable Kalyan to reply to the statements of colleagues.
Honorable Kalyan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought I said all of what the chairperson had to say, and I wonder why I have to battle my way through, even though I know the rules just as well. It's disappointing. Colleagues, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for the active participation towards this motion. To the colleague who feels ashamed, I would say shame on you, because you impugned the integrity of the members who are sitting here. You impugned our integrity, and I'm sorry that the President didn't rule immediately that it's unparliamentary and it should be withdrawn. Colleagues, we all swore to uphold our rules and regulations when we stood there and we took the oath. But now we find that people are avoiding upholding those rules and using technicalities to remain in office. This is not about any person. It is about a principle which everybody agrees on. Oh, now we are
Madam, please. Madam, please. The provisions of Rule 44. Nobody would like to be maintained or to remain. Nobody wants to remain. everybody will follow the principle once it's implemented.
I withdraw. The principle of rotation is explicit in all organs of the AU. And I invite you to read and familiarize yourself with the AU guidelines on regional rotation as agreed to by all our leaders in January 2006. So those who want to take this and get a legal opinion from the AU, I can assure you that it will be confirmed, the principle. There's been an overwhelming endorsement by this House on the principle of rotation. Yes, it is in the protocol. Many of you have gone through great lengths to tell us it is in the protocol. But colleagues, we are delusional if we think that it's going to be ratified by May 2018. It's not going to happen. Therefore, in order to avoid a real bun fight in May 2018, let's go for the amendment. There is great enthusiasm to ratify the protocol. The reality is we can't do it. Our presidents of our countries do it. But what we have the power to do is to make the rules here that will make our lives and the work of this Bureau great and good. We have the power to amend the rules. We don't have to wait for the protocol. East Africa had the first presidency with Honorable Mongela. Idris Muesa came from the Central Africa region. The third president came from the West Africa region, and then the process of rotation was abandoned. It's time for the next region to take their position. In conclusion, I have no objection to the amendment proposed by the honourable member from Zimbabwe, that we go back and look at the resolution that was proposed in 2007 and adopted by this House, that this House upholds the resolution of 2007 with respect to the principle of rotation. Thank you once again.
Merci,
I thank you.
chers collègues.
Thank you, my dear colleague. Before taking the vote you're all expecting, I'd like to say that here it is about the amendment of the rules of procedure in order to include the principle of rotation. This is what we're talking about. We're adopting this principle, and in accordance with Rule 94, we will take a vote for us to implement the principle of rotation. Mr. Chairperson, the floor is yours. Mr. President, thank you very much indeed. I said earlier that the debate we're having is about the motion which itself pertains to the adoption of the principle of rotation. And the Presidency, the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament. This is what the motion is about. And once we're finished with this, and this has was adopted already in 2007, but the difference today is that after having adopted, because we'll be adopting the same motion for the second time, the difference is that today you will ask the mover of the motion to propose amendments to the rules of procedure to make sure that this principle of rotation be enshrined in the rules of procedure. Therefore, any of our colleagues here can draft amendments, proposed amendments, that will be handed over to you, and then you will consider the relevance and then submit them to the Committee on Rules. Then the Committee on Rules will include the amendment in the rules of procedure and come back here to the plenary under your leadership to have them adopted. This will be done later on. The point today is to adopt the principle through the motion, the principle of rotation, and this has already been said in 2007. But the committee will give the modalities, the practical arrangements to implement the principle of rotation. This is what we're talking about, Mr. President. I fully agree with you. We shouldn't even say that we adopt, because this principle is already included in the new protocol that is mentioned in the document. This is my problem. So we adopt once again what's already been adopted by our heads of state. Now, as far as the modalities are concerned, how to include them in the rules of procedure, this is the problem. This is the issue, isn't it?
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Yes, just one moment. Wait.
Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead. Pierre.
Mon micro. Voici la démarche.
Well, this is the approach. Please, let's adopt first the motion. First, adopt the motion, since the mover of the motion has taken the floor. Then, after that, you will ask the mover of the motion to propose the amendments. Mr. President, so I said, first let's adopt the motion, and then you ask the mover of the motion to propose the amendments in accordance with Article 93. And then, when you receive the amendments, you will see the the Committee on Rules, to propose the terms of these amendments to be included in the text. And then, since the principle of rotation will be enshrined in the text, we will set the modalities. It should be included in the rules of procedure. I hope I'm clear enough. Mr. President, please. No, we're not going to reopen the debate. Let's move on to the adoption of the motion. The debate is closed.
Procedure. Procedure, Mr. President. First of all, I want to commend the chair of the Rules Committee. He's being very, very professional, very intellectual, very legal, very correct. He has said it all. Where we are, Mr. President, is a very last portion of this. What we need to, in order to adopt the motion is, first of all, to consider the amendment I've proposed. Yes. If we don't do that, it will be on procedure again. So at this stage, you need a seconder, and then you go to Rule 64.12. Once we exhaust that one, then we are done. Then we consider and adopt the motion. And I agree with him. After that, this thing will then go back to the Rules Committee. So thank you very much.
Put the question, Mr. President, motion on the amendment. Motion.
Point of order. Point of order, Mr. President.
Motion, Président.
Chers collègues, je mets au voix la.
Dear colleagues, I'm taking a vote now. Who are in favor of the motion? Raise your hands.
We have amendments to the motion. These have to be considered. So the motion is going to be adopted with amendments.
Yes.
With amendments.
We are voting as amended. The motion as amended, we are voting. Yeah?
Pardon, Monsieur le Président.
Sorry. Apologies, Mr. President. Sorry.
Monsieur le Président, je crois que
I think that what you said is quite clear. Now that the chairperson of the committee said that you will table the work to the mover of the motion, those who made amendments will get in touch with the mover and then propose their amendments, and then we can close.
Procedure.
Il faut parler.
Procedure.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, please.
Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président.
Il y a eu
Monsieur le Président.
Le secrétariat a
The Secretariat has received amendments. The first amendment was made by Chief Chirumbira, the second by Honorable Nangwa. These are the amendments we've received so far. Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order. Yes, go ahead. We're not reopening the debate, says the President. May I, Mr. President?
Président.
Procedure, Mr. President.
S'il vous plaît.
So, please, Mr. President, the motion says that therefore resolves that this House debate the principle of rotation and include it formally in the current rules of procedure of the PAP. This is what the motion says. Is it what we are going to vote? Because it is different from what was said by the chairperson of the committee. These are two separate things. The chairperson of the committee said that we will adopt the motion and include it in the rules of procedure. But if we abide by the motion, it means that we take the decision to include it to the rules of procedure. Is it what we're going to do now?
Procedure.
Procedure.
Monsieur le Président, vous avez
Mr. Chairman, you followed what our colleague just said, which is quite contradictory with what you said. Our colleague has just said something new. What is your reaction? Mr. President, from my point of view, there is no contradiction. The principle of rotation will be agreed after the adoption of the motion. But once this rotation adopted, what do we mean by rotation? It has to mean something, which means that the amendments pertaining to the principle of rotation be included, drafted by the mover of the motion. No, I don't think, Mr. President, no, I don't think it's the same approach. It's not the same approach at all. If we read the French version, therefore, the resolves that this House debate the principle of rotation and include it formally. Include it formally. So, and we are supposed to have an amendment to include an amendment to say that we need to amend the text as follows. The election of the Bureau of the PAP is done on the principle of rotation, and the Bureau is elected for a period of 3 years, renewed once. So, who are those in favor of the amendment? We have two amendments. Procedure, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, We've been discussing this matter since this morning. Let's conclude. Let's try and conclude it now. Point of order. Well, stepping in as the mover of the amendment, I said that since the protocol envisions that the Bureau is elected for 3 years and can be re-elected once, if we are inconsistent with this provision, we will be contradictory with the protocol.
Mr. President, I think you can put the question to vote as amended. As you have said.
Suivez,
the motion
suivez.
is amended. Let us vote.
Non, non, nous ne pouvons pas.
No. No. Let's adopt this motion paragraph by paragraph. Mr. President, there is a motion tabled, debated, and the chairperson of the committee has very clearly given all the indications and all the clarifications as well as the references when it comes to the implementation. Now, is it the rules of